Всем привет, друзья! Вы на канале Вот Такие, меня зовут Рома. Если вы впервые на этом канале, то не забудьте подписаться на канал, поставить лайк этому видео. А мы с вами сейчас будем смотреть объяснение клипа DAECHWITA от AGUST, он же Suga. Объясняет кореец. Насколько я знаю, этот парень, блогер, очень подробно и очень круто объясняет. Мы с вами также смотрели его объяснение на Idol. Тоже оставлю вам подсказочку вот здесь. Ну и чтобы не тянуть, погнали смотреть. Так, не понял. Должны же быть русские субтитры. Что происходит? Угу, интересно. Ладно. Мы делаем вот так вот. Перевести. И смотрим русские субтитры. Так, давай еще разочек.
Suga has delivered another hard-hitting mixtape titled D2. The first August D album, released in 2016, focused on the tough times Suga faced when he was a teenager. Suga's at a very different place now. He's much older and he's much more successful. And this album focuses on the changes of his feelings after becoming one of music's biggest superstars. It's a very honest album, and my personal favorite off of this is the title track, DAECHWITA. It's an ultimate flex track slash warning slash reminder with tons of historical references, so let's take a look into
Да,
it.
мы как раз с вами пришли сюда, чтобы посмотреть вот эти исторические отсылки, которые вам лучше объяснит всего именно корейский человек, да, который знается в этом, который живет в этом, который разбирается. Поэтому мы и пришли смотреть это видео. Так. Это трон, я насколько понимаю. И такой интересный трон, если честно. Но локация вот эта просто сумасшедшая, да? Это насколько исторически сильная.
DAECHWITA is Korean traditional marching music that was played when kings or royalty were moving about or important guests would visit, as well as when army would be.
Ну, собственно говоря, вы мне говорили, да, что это музыка, даже народная, кажется, так вы писали, может быть, не прав. Ну, собственно говоря, оно, наверное, так и есть, да, народная музыка Кореи.
There are two main characters in this music video, a King Suga and a bottom class Suga. We can see that the King Suga is a tyrant. He has everyone kneeling down with the faces down in the ground. And he beheads people who have complaints in this scene.
Ну, это вообще, конечно, жестко, прям моментище такое.
You can see the Shinmungo here. People in the Joseon dynasty would hit this drum if they had something that they've been wronged. They'd hit this drum and the king or someone up in the hierarchy would come and sort out their problems. Except here, King Suga is killing the people who have such complaints and issues. But the bottom class Suga, with the help of BTS and army represented by the 6 other men and a woman in the...
Прикольно. Начинает переворот. Мне просто интересно, как они обыграют, что это ну, типа, современный, да, вот современное перетекает в прошлое. Как они это объяснят?
He drives up a car with the men representing BTS and also a cute painting of Bang PD. By the way, this painting has its origins in a Jungkook drawing of Bang PD. It's pretty funny. The King Suga sees this and gives a thumbs down.
Отсылка к Чонгуку, он рисовал эту картину, и Шуга вставил эту картину.
Men representing BTS and also a cute painting of
Bang PD.
By the way, this painting has its
С рисунка Чонгука Банга Википедии, это довольно забавно.
origins in a Jungkook
То есть я вот сейчас не совсем понял, это реальная картина, и Чонгук когда-то где-то ее рисовал? Или это картина, которую нарисовал Чонгук, и они ее вставили, типа, обыграв как историческую какую-то?
drawing of Pang PD. It's pretty funny. The King Sugar sees this and
Ну, это
gives a thumbs
понятно.
down and captures
Если палец вниз, это типа казнь.
the bottom class Sugar. The King Sugar wants to kill him and does this graceful sword dance, which apparently Sugar learned in 2 days. Meanwhile, bottom class Sugar, blindfolded and tied down, starts headbanging, singing 대취타. Remember how I told you that 대취타 was played when kings were about, or when the army would be marching? The bottom class Sugar singing this is an announcement that he is actually the real king. He feels like he's the king.
Офигеть, вот что, да? Как тоже продуманно сделано, типа я король, не ты король, а я король, поэтому я буду исполнять этот трек, и ко мне придут люди.
The people under the king, the very ones that were kneeling to him in the beginning, are now joining Sugar, headbanging with him. This 대취타 is
я вообще этого не
also for
замечал,
them.
класс.
These kneeling people are armies marching together with the bottom class Sugar. At the end, the executioner who was supposed to take down the bottom class Sugar actually frees him and gives him a gun. Bottom class
переходит на
Sugar
его
grabs
сторону,
this
да.
and shoots the king. I think the MV and the song is a metaphor for BTS and ARMY taking down the existing system and the ruling forces of the industry. The King Sugar represents the system, the existing system, the few powerful companies that had control over the industry before BTS came to the scene.
Офигенная метафора, мне так кажется. Не знаю, ну, закладывалось ли это изначально в смысл, но он это интересно рассказал, и я, в принципе, ну, где-то могу верить этой теории, мне так кажется. Напишите, кстати, что вы думаете. Стоит верить этому? Но я бы верил, потому что мне кажется, это очень логично, и метафора просто прекрасна.
Sugar is Sugar himself in a small company with basically nothing, as if he was born into a bottom class, and winning the people over, eventually taking down the king with BTS and armies. I think Sugar picked the perfect motif to convey his message. And if you look at the historical references, you'll be more amazed at how clever this all is. Well, this single verse has a lot to unpack, but let's just start with this line. The Joseon dynasty, which is most likely where this song is set in, had a strict class system where there was a heavy discrimination based on which class you were born into. Slaves were not even considered human. They would be traded in cases their owners didn't have enough money, and they were thought of more as just things.
Блин, ну вы тоже, да, вы задумывались вообще, как это было прям? Для меня, типа, человека свободного сейчас представить, что ты родился вот в том мире, да, это прям трэш.
Think about the mistreatment that BTS received earlier on in their careers. They faced heavy discrimination due to them being from a small company, and they were mistreated. So it's easy to understand why Sugar called himself a slave here. Slaves in Joseon were almost completely blocked off from advancing to higher classes. So for a slave to become a king is basically impossible. But Sugar's saying he made it happen. The following line is a reference to Kwang Hae-gun, the king of Joseon dynasty in the 17th century. He developed paranoia while in power and notoriously became violent and reckless. Hence the line, Berserk Tiger, Kwang Hae flow. But I think there are more reasons Sugar referenced Kwang Hae in the lyrics, especially if you consider what his life was like. Kwang Hae-gun had a very roller coaster of a life. Originally, he was a war hero, defending Joseon against the Japanese invasion of 1592, one of the biggest wars in Korean history. His father, who was then king, had fled when the war broke out, and the 18-year-old Prince Kwang Hae led Joseon troops in the battlefield. Rarely at this time did kings or to-be kings go out into the battlefield themselves. So Kwang Hae, fighting with the people, won their hearts over, and there were movements to throne him as the king instead of his father. The father felt threatened by this, so he made a lot of political efforts to stop Kwang Hae from gaining influence. Eventually, Kwang Hae became stuck between two large political powers, and this struggle eventually made Kwang Hae go paranoid and become violent and reckless.
Вообще это, как мне кажется, типа история не новая в плане того, что ну, многие короли страдали этим, да, то есть вот это чувство власти, оно все-таки опьяняет и не знаю, я же говорю, я любитель истории, я со школы люблю историю, и мне, например, очень интересно сейчас смотреть это видео со стороны разбора исторического, опять же, насколько я не сильно знаком с историей именно Кореи, поэтому это очень интересно, и давайте дальше продолжим.
Ultimately, he was dethroned after a coup. I think Suga somewhat relates to Kwang Hae as he himself had been through a tough adolescence, having to go out into the battlefield at an early age, just like Kwang Hae did. He was an idol with no money, from a small company stuck in an industry dominated by big corporations. When Suga started winning battles and gaining power, he must felt a lot of efforts from the existing big powers to keep him away from the throne, like what Kwang Hae experienced from his father when the people wanted him to become the king. Suga mentions putting his past in the rice chest. For many Koreans, the word Twiju, or rice chest, is strongly connected to the tragic story of Sado Seja, which involves him dying in a rice chest. Sado Seja was the son of then King Yeongjo, and his father was extremely harsh on him, humiliating him and scolding him in front of others at a very early age. This became so severe that Sado Seja attempted to commit suicide a few times, but even then, he was treated terribly. He developed what modern doctors diagnose as bipolar disorder and began acting very violently. Eventually, the king ended up hating Sado Seja so much that he ordered Sado Seja to go into a rice chest. Sado Seja went in, and he was stuck inside for 8 days and eventually starved to death. Sado Seja had a troubled life, filled with being humiliated and mistreated, and mental health issues just not being understood. Suga has been pretty open about his mental health issues he had when he was growing up, and I think he relates to Sado Seja. He sees himself in it. He says he's putting his past in the rice chest. It's a declaration that he's putting the old troubled Yoongi, the Sado Seja Yoongi, behind and looking at what's ahead of him. In the second verse, Suga focuses more on how he's now on the throne and he's better than everybody else. Suga directly name drops Bang PD and also takes a shot at other artists who do drugs thinking that they write better music while they're high. I won't name any names here, but I'm sure you can think of an artist.
Стоп,
or a
подождите,
few
я
artists.
сейчас что-то запутался. Банк PD это какой-то рэпер? Это отсылка к какому-то рэперу или что это? Еще разок.
In the second verse, Suga focuses more on how he's now on the throne and he's better than everybody else. Suga directly name drops Bang PD.
Банк PD тоже делает снимки с другими. Ну, насколько я понимаю, Банк PD это какой-то рэпер, к которому он обращался.
And also takes a shot at other artists who do drugs thinking that they write better music while they're high. I won't name any names here, but I'm sure you can think of an artist or a few artists for that matter that will be at the butt end of this. Some in bigger companies, in fact.
Ooh, boy!
The diss aside, this line is also a glimpse into Bang PD's relationship with BTS.
Это, вот
In a
это он,
typical
я так
company, it'd be
понимаю, нет?
extremely difficult
Кто
to
это?
even mention the name of Bang PD's relationship with
Вот это вот, да, он?
BTS.
Напишите, будет
In a typical
интересно
company,
почитать.
it'd be extremely difficult to even mention the name of your boss this openly without putting the honorifics
А, это начальник.
Nim, especially considering how much a veteran and how much older Bang PD is compared to BTS. However, Suga name drops Bang PD as if he was his friend. We can sense that there is a very close bond and assume that Bang PD is very democratic with BTS. The fact that Suga's talking of Pang PD so casually is a flex of its own to others, as it's a sign that BTS has become so big and valuable to the company that he's at level with Pang PD.
Ну, это очень круто, кстати, да, типа, я очень надеюсь на то, что у них именно отношения такие, да, то есть они дружат и при этом вот отношения на равных, а не потому, что они стали настолько крутыми и успешными, что по-другому он уже с ними не может. Ну, типа, больше надеюсь на какие-то человеческие отношения, наверное, так правильно. Вот это очень интересный момент был.
Here Suga uses the Korean word hyunta. Hyunta is an interesting Korean slang that is used all around the internet. Directly translated as wise man's time, it is a word to describe the feeling you get right after you've ejaculated. Yes, ejaculated. And you feel no more sexual urges and you have a moment of clarity in your brain. You feel still, present, and sometimes disappointed that the short moment of satisfaction was all you got and you worked so hard for it. This slang originated from Japan, but it has become a staple in Korean everyday language, and it is widely used in everyday life outside of sexual situations. Usually in situations when you finally got what you dearly wanted and you wonder, that was it? Suga's saying he's feeling extreme hyunta because he has it all. He has money, he has clothes, he has everything he ever wanted, and there's nothing, no one above him. While this could be considered a small cry for help, I think within the context of this song, it's more of a hard flex. He's saying, others can only dream of what I have, but now I got everything and I feel bored and disappointed. But you won't know how I feel because you never had any of this. BTS has been on the top for the past few years, absolutely dominating, with a level of popularity that has never been seen in K-pop before. They're so dominant that it's sometimes easy to forget that they too had humble beginnings. In fact, more humble than most top artists out now today. They had to fight their way through discrimination, mistreatment, and humiliation. 대취타 is a reminder that this was where they started, and they took that system down. And it's also a warning that they had the resilience and the force to go through all of this, to go from slave to king. If you want us to make more videos like this, supporting us on patreon.com/DKDKTV helps us a lot. These explain videos get copyright claimed, thus we make no money off of them, 0 cents. So please consider supporting us on patreon.com/DKDKTV. For just a cup of coffee a month, you can get exclusive content and also help us continue our careers.
Ой, ребят, ну, объяснение очень крутое, я не знаю, блин, особенно в плане исторических каких-то моментов. Мне очень понравилось, так я со школы люблю историю и кайфую от таких интересных рассказов. Напишите, как вам это было, по-моему, круто. И мне нравится, что нам удается вместе узнавать какие-то новые моменты. Скорее всего, вы уже это видели и много чего отсюда знаете, но почему нет? Может быть, кто-то что-то не видел, и вместе мы просвещаемся. Друзья, до новых встреч. Обязательно еще будут видео, и практически каждый день они выходят. Вот, прям очень редко я не выпускаю видео, там, хотя бы одно видео в день. Поэтому поддержите меня лайком, подпиской на канал, если вы впервые здесь. И до новых встреч, друзья.